Volume 2. The Fated Confrontation. Chapter 11. Imprisonment and Probing. The secret prison of the Black Armor Legion was hidden within an isolated black rock fortress. This place never saw sunlight, surrounded by dense forests and sheer cliffs, accessible only to members of the Black Armor Legion. Compared to the Empire's dungeons, this prison was more like a death cage. No one ever left, unless they were carried out as a lifeless corpse. Alya was shackled to the wall, her wrists locked in cold iron restraints. The chilling sensation seeped into her bones, making her limbs stiff and numb. The manacles were engraved with sealing runes, not only restricting her movements, but also serving as a device that absorbed soul energy. Whenever she attempted to summon her power, she could only feel an oppressive force weighing her down. The presence of the undead beast lingered faintly in the depths of her consciousness, but it was as if a higher-tier force had sealed it away, completely, preventing it from responding to her call. She was utterly imprisoned. Gritting her teeth, Alya felt sweat trickle down her temple. Her injuries had yet to fully heal, and during her rough transfer by the Black Armor Legion, her wounds had torn open again. Though they had been crudely bandaged, the pain was a constant reminder of her fragile state. Her situation had taken a dire turn. This was not a place where she could simply wait for rescue. She had to find a way out. Vigilance amidst captivity, outside. Her cell, the soldiers often spoke in hushed tones. Their voices were muffled, but Alya managed to catch fragments of their conversation. She actually survived. She's too dangerous. Even the commander seems wary of her. Stay away from her. The Black Armor sorcerers have warned us. Even with the seal, her power isn't something ordinary men can handle. Alya kept her head lowered, showing no outward reaction, but internally, she was analyzing every word. She had assumed she was nothing more than an abandoned pawn of the Empire, yet the fear in the soldiers' voices suggested otherwise. Her power, or rather her existence, clearly meant more to the Black Armor Legion than she had realized. What were they so afraid of? She slowly lifted her gaze, surveying her surroundings. The prison cell was built from obsidian, its walls embedded with intricate magical formations, undoubtedly reinforcing the seal. The door was a heavy black iron gate, only accessible with a special key carried by the guards. Outside, 2 fully armed Black Armor Legion soldiers stood on watch, their weapons glowing with an eerie blue light, clearly enchanted to counter soul arts. But no matter how secure a prison seemed, there was always a weakness. Alya knew this. Well, seeking a weakness. Closing her eyes, she feigned exhaustion, but in reality she was listening intently to her surroundings. She began calculating the guards' movements, their shift rotations, and the intervals at which food was delivered. Shift change every 6 hours. Meals delivered by a designated soldier, requiring the opening of a small hatch. Patrols pass by every 5 minutes. A faint crack in the upper left corner of the cell door. Alya's fingertips twitched slightly. Though her soul power was sealed, she refused to sit idle. If that crack was deep enough, she might be able to exploit it, creating just enough of a distraction to shift the guard's attention and carve out an opportunity for herself. Just as she was silently devising a plan, she heard the sound of steady footsteps approaching from outside. Someone was coming. Alya swiftly concealed her thoughts, letting her posture slacken as if she had resigned herself to her fate. The cell door creaked open. The Black Armor soldiers stepped aside, making way for a lone figure who stepped into the dimly lit chamber. His armor gleamed with a dark metallic sheen, and his piercing gray eyes seemed to cut through the shadows, capable of seeing through all deceptions. Rehn Alya lifted her head, locking eyes with him, her gaze devoid of fear, laced instead with a cold wariness. "It seems you've already adjusted to your new environment," Rehn remarked, his tone as indifferent as ever. Yet his eyes lingered on her for a brief moment, as if assessing her condition. Alya scoffed, a smirk tugging at her lips. Adjusted? Your Black Armor Legion certainly has a unique way of treating guests. Rehn ignored her sarcasm. His gaze flickered toward the cell wall, as if noticing something. Alya tensed internally, wary that he might have caught on to her observations. But instead, he merely shifted his focus back to her, his voice devoid of emotion. You should understand. By now, your fate is no longer in your hands. Alya let out a dry chuckle. Is that so? If I were truly worthless, you would have killed me already. The fact that you're standing here proves that I still have value to you. Rehn's eyes narrowed slightly, as though entertained by her insight. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Smart women don't always live long, Alya. She refused to back down, meeting his gaze head-on. Then let's see. Will you use me first? Or will I find my chance to turn the tables? The tension between them thickened, a silent battle waging in their eyes. The air in the cell grew heavier, as if the next word or movement could ignite a clash. Just then, a soldier outside the cell rapped against the doorframe, signaling that Rehn's time was up. Rehn held her gaze for a moment longer before turning away. But just as he was about to step out, he spoke one last sentence, his voice low and deliberate. You should think carefully about who your true enemy is. Alya frowned slightly, watching his departing figure, a flicker of doubt stirring in her mind. What did he mean by that? Her situation remained dire, but the fire in her heart had not dimmed. This game was only just beginning. The air in the prison remained cold and damp, the moisture seeping through the stone walls, carrying a chilling presence. Alya sat against the wall, her hands still bound by shackles, but her posture remained upright, her gaze sharp and wary. She knew that the Black Armor Legion would not treat a prisoner well without reason. Whatever patience they had, it must come with a price. Sure enough, before long, familiar footsteps echoed through the corridor. Steady and powerful, neither hurried nor slow, as if each step had been carefully measured. Rehn had arrived. This time his presence was as composed as ever, his expression as indifferent as before. However, unlike before, he carried a wooden tray in his hands. On it was a bowl of steaming stew and a cup of water. The rich aroma of cooked meat spread through the cold prison, an odd contrast to its bleak surroundings, making the scene feel strangely out of place. Alya said nothing, merely watching him with guarded eyes, testing him. Rehn did not speak immediately. He placed the tray in front of her before crouching down slowly, his gaze calm and unwavering as he looked at her. Eat. His voice carried no particular emotion, as if he were merely stating a fact. Alya did not move. Instead, she let out a cold chuckle, her tone laced with mockery. What is this? Are you fattening me up before the execution? Rehn raised an eyebrow slightly, showing no signs of anger. Instead of responding with irritation, his expression remained patient, his voice steady. If we wanted to kill you, we wouldn't waste food. Alya narrowed her eyes, scrutinizing him, trying to extract more meaning from his words. Rehn did not rush her, speaking again in a measured tone. You fail to understand your worth. The Empire will not kill you so easily. Alya's brows furrowed slightly as an uneasy premonition crept into her mind. She had always thought of herself as nothing more than a discarded pawn of the Empire. Yet now, she was being held captive by the Black Armor Legion, and they seemed reluctant to let her die. That could only mean one thing. Her existence was far more important than she had ever realized. Rehn seemed to sense her unease and continued. The Black Armor Legion sorcerers have confirmed that your soul power is not ordinary necromancy. Alya's pupils contracted slightly. Your power, not even our strongest sorcerers can completely seal it. His voice was calm but firm, as if stating an undeniable truth. This is not simple necromancy. It is a higher-tier bloodline ability. Bloodline ability? Alya's heart pounded violently, Necromancers typically relied on soul contracts and dark magic, but bloodline abilities, those were innate talents, possessed only by a rare few from ancient lineages or special races. She had always assumed she was just an ordinary soulcaster, perhaps with an above-average affinity for undead summons. But now, Rehn was telling her that her power was far more complex than she had ever believed. Her fingers twitched slightly, curling into a fist beneath her tattered sleeve. Rehn observed her reaction, a flicker of intrigue passing through his gaze. He knew she was processing this revelation. "The Empire cannot fully control your power," he continued after a brief pause, his voice carrying a deeper significance. "That is why you're still alive. The Empire cannot control me?" Alya clenched her teeth as memories flashed through her mind. She had always thought of herself as a fugitive, a discarded tool that the Empire had used and then cast aside. But now, it seemed that her existence held far greater weight in the grand scheme of things. She lifted her head, her sharp gaze locking onto Rehn's. "What do you want from me?" Rehn met her eyes, his expression unreadable. Instead of answering directly, he said, "If you choose to cooperate, you might just live." Alya's pulse quickened ever so slightly. She knew Rehn wasn't one to waste words. The Black Armor Legion wouldn't attempt to recruit her without reason, especially someone like Rehn, a cold, pragmatic commander known for his ruthless efficiency. If he had spoken the word cooperation, then it meant her power truly held an irreplaceable value to them. The question was, would she cooperate? Could she trust Rehn? Silence filled the prison cell. The only movement came from the rising steam of the untouched stew. Slowly, Alya reached for the cup of water, tilting it slightly before taking a small sip. She did not touch the food, but the simple act of drinking was enough to show her willingness. To listen, at the very least. Fleeting smirk tugged at the corner of Rehn's lips, so faint it was nearly imperceptible. He seemed satisfied with her response. Rising to his feet, he adjusted the cloak draped over his shoulders and said calmly, "I'll come back for you." Alya did not reply. She merely watched his retreating figure, her thoughts a whirlwind of possibilities. What exactly is my power? What do the Empire and the Black Armor Legion want from me? And most importantly, how can I turn this game in my favor? At that moment, she realized, she was no longer just a fugitive. She was a key piece in this war, and the choices she made, from now on, would determine the course of the future. The night was deep, and the Black Armor Legion's camp lay in the darkness like a slumbering beast, silent, yet exuding an air of menace. The glow of the campfires flickered against the heavy black tents, casting twisted shadows and filling the air with an oppressive tension. Deep within the camp, inside a secluded tent, General Night Owl stood with his hands behind his back, staring intently at a black metal map spread before him, his brows furrowed in thought. "Rehn, what exactly are you doing?" he muttered under his breath, a glint of contemplation flickering in his gaze. Something had changed in Rehn. The Black Armor Legion's vice commander had always been ruthless, executing orders without hesitation and showing no mercy to his targets. Yet ever since Alya was brought to the camp, Rehn's actions had taken on a subtle shift. Not only had he interrogated her multiple times personally, but he had also refrained from inflicting true torture upon her. And today, he had even brought her food and water. Such an act was unprecedented in the history of the Black Armor Legion. Rehn was no ordinary commander. He was the Empire's god of war, the pillar of the Black Armor Legion. His loyalty was beyond question. Yet Night Owl could not shake the feeling that something about his attitude this time was off. Hesitation? No. He refused to believe that Rehn would hesitate. But if it wasn't hesitation, then what was it? Night Owl's gaze narrowed, a cold gleam flickering in the depths of his eyes. With a wave of his hand, a soldier clad in a black cloak emerged from the shadows, kneeling on one knee before him. "General." Night Owl's voice was low and steady. From this moment on, monitor Rehn's every move closely. Pay special attention to his interactions with Alya. Every detail must be reported to me immediately. The soldier did not question the order. He simply bowed his head in acknowledgement before vanishing into the darkness. Taking a deep breath, Night Owl turned back toward the metal map before him. Scattered across its surface were various markings, symbols representing the Empire, Mundhi, Black Armor Legion, the Rebels, and a few other hidden forces yet to reveal themselves. At the very center of these markings, a faint golden rune flickered. Very few within the Black Armor Legion's upper ranks understood the true significance of this symbol. It represented the rightful heir to the undead kingdom, Alya? No. She wasn't worthy. Not yet. A cold smirk tugged at the corner of Night Owl's lips. He and the other high-ranking officials of the Black Armor Legion knew the truth. The Empire's greatest fear was not Alya. It was the heir who had yet to emerge from the shadows. Alya was merely a pawn, a test, a baited hook cast into the deep waters. Her existence is merely a means to draw out the true king. That was the real plan of the Black Armor Legion. Night Owl closed his eyes, recalling the confidential meeting he had attended not long ago with the Legion's top officials. The bloodline of the undead kingdom has been wiped out by the Empire. The only exception is the heir they failed to eliminate. The Empire has been searching for him in secret, but they have found nothing. Now, this girl, Alya, has appeared, and even our strongest sorcerers cannot fully seal her soul power. She cannot be the true king, but her existence may lead us to him. Night Owl's eyes snapped open, their depths gleaming with cold resolve. If Alya was the bait, then what about Rehn? Had he begun to suspect the truth? Was he still merely a loyal soldier of the Black Armor Legion? Or had he, perhaps without realizing it, already become entangled in the unseen forces shifting beneath this battlefield? Night Owl needed answers. And he needed them fast. His fingers tapped against the metal surface of the table. One slow, deliberate tap after another. Like the tolling of a bell, each strike echoed in the darkness. The game had already begun. The night was as dark as ink, shrouding the Black Armor Legion's secret prison in an oppressive gloom. Outside the heavy iron doors, patrolling soldiers walked steadily across the hardened ground, their armored boots echoing in the silence. Inside the cell, Alya leaned against the cold stone wall, her eyes half closed. She appeared to be asleep, but in reality, her mind remained on high alert. She was waiting for the right moment. Since being brought to the Black Armor Legion's camp, she had carefully studied the patrol patterns of the guards. Every 2 hours, the soldiers rotated shifts, and the brief moment of transition was when security was at its weakest. Now, all she needed was an opportunity, a real chance to break free. A faint sound broke the stillness of the night. Outside the iron bars, a soldier clad in black armor passed by, and in one swift, subtle motion, he slipped a small piece of paper into her cell. Alya's eyelashes quivered. She waited until the soldier had disappeared down the corridor before, slowly reaching out to pick up the note. The third iron gate. When the moonlight shines. Just 8 words. No signature, no additional details. Alya's heart clenched. Her first instinct was that this was a trap. Under the watchful eyes of the Black Armor Legion, nothing could happen so easily. If someone truly wanted to help her, why not reveal themselves? Why such an ambiguous message? Yet another possibility surfaced in her mind. She had been searching for an opening, and now an opportunity had presented itself. If this were a game of strategy, she had already been pushed to the edge of the board. She had no room to retreat. The only thing she could do was carefully weigh the risks and decide whether to make a desperate move. To trust or to doubt. Alya took a deep breath, replaying every event that had led to her capture. Whose pawn was she? The Empire's? The Black Armor Legion's? Or was there a third force at play? one she had not yet foreseen. She thought of Rehn. That man remained an enigma. He was not as ruthless as Night Owl, yet he still stood firmly on the Empire's side. Earlier today, he had told her that her soul power was far more unique and far more dangerous than she herself realized. Then why was the Black Armor Legion keeping her imprisoned instead of executing her? What were they waiting for? And Night Owl, the true master of the Black Armor Legion, had never once confronted her directly, yet he observed every interaction between her and Rehn from the shadows. He was the one pulling the strings. What was his true goal? Simply the destruction of the undead kingdom? Or was there a far greater scheme in motion? Alya's thoughts spun wildly as she clenched the note in her fingers. A cold chill ran through her hands. Her gaze shifted toward the iron lock on the cell door. She drew a deep breath. It was time to decide. Time passed slowly. A sliver of moonlight crept through the narrow window, casting a pale glow onto the damp stone floor. Outside, the prison was momentarily drowned in silence. Alya stood up quietly and approached the bars, listening intently. From a distance, she heard the guards conversing. Their tones were slightly lax, bored after long hours of watch duty. Just as she had predicted, each shift change led to a subtle drop in vigilance. This was her one chance. She glanced down at her ankle shackles. The lock was sturdy, but over the past few days, she had gradually worn down its edges, little by little. Kneeling down, she ran her fingers along the narrow gap in the metal, silently counting her next steps. She recalled the prison's layout. Her cell was in the innermost section. If she followed the outward path, then the so-called third iron gate should be near the exit. If she could get past the first two gates, could she truly escape? But she also knew, even if she broke free of the cell, the outer perimeter would still be heavily guarded by Black Armor soldiers. Even so, Alya no longer hesitated. She made her choice. With careful precision, she began working at the lock's weakened edge with her fingernails, all the while controlling her breathing to stay perfectly calm. Her fingers trembled from the strain, but her eyes remained sharp, like ice-cold stars piercing through the darkness. Finally, after a precise flick of pressure, the shackle loosened, slightly. At that moment, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Alya immediately stilled. She quickly withdrew her hands and slumped back into the corner, resuming her feigned state of exhaustion. A soldier from the Black Armor Legion strode by, his gaze sweeping over her form. Seeing nothing unusual, he turned away and continued his patrol. Alya let out a slow, controlled breath. She would wait for the perfect moment, the moment when moonlight touched the third iron gate. Then, a faint metallic sound reached her ears. Somewhere, beyond the corridor, a mechanism had been triggered. Alya held her breath, her gaze locked onto the prison door. Was it the soldier who had given her the note? Or was there another unseen force at work within the Black Armor Legion? If she took this step, she might fall into yet another trap. But if she stayed, her fate would remain in the hands of the Empire. Slowly, she rose to her feet. Her eyes gleamed with determination in the darkness. "Whoever it is," she murmured, her voice as soft as a whisper of wind, "I will not let anyone decide my fate but me."